the one, the only Ben Sion. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Table and Able. Today we're doing Simon Reshid Ches, new week in Shulchan Aruch Yomi, 218. Brachos Hanasim al Anisim. If a miracle happens, you gotta make a bracha. But what kind of miracle? Is it a supernatural miracle or something? A devastating car crash and you survive. Make a bracha over there. We'll talk about that at the end of the Simon, and I'll give you my personal opinion. In Ian to lean on, well, I personally think the halacha it's a machlokas. As everything in halacha is, there's always a machlokas. But that's the point of machlokas, two opinions. You get to decide. You're supposed to, as an individual, you have the bechira chashis to decide. At least try your best to decide which opinion is the correct one. Obviously, Lamaisa, you probably should ask a shaila from a qualified rabbi. But I believe even people who are not rabbis are qualified to have opinions if they're Talmidei Chachamim, people who study the Torah for 5, 10 years. They have the ability to, I wouldn't say to paskin for themselves, but at least to reason for themselves. And therefore, in cases where it's a machlokas in the poskim, I think you could pick which one. Or if you asked a shaila many years ago and then you learn the sugya yourself, I believe you have the ability to change that. Even if you're not ordained as a rabbi, I don't think there's really such a thing as rabbinical ordination nowadays. The concept of the smicha really stopped a long time ago. It had to be Rabbi for Moshe Rabbeinu. It stopped a while ago. That's why there's no Sanhedrin. That's why there's no Mises Beis nowadays, and that's why there's no Malchus and there's no Knossos. There's no fines given out today. There's no real even Dine Mamnis. There's a concept of Shlichus Hayu that the Beis Din can act as shluchim of smuchim, only for certain halachas, but generally there's no real rabbis today. Anyone who claims to be a rabbi, in the yeshiva I learned in Beitar, right, Friedman's yeshiva, I was, let's say, 35 years old. I got married at 35. I was in his yeshiva at that point. There were guys who got married at 22 years old, and the day after they got married, they come back to yeshiva. They're in the chabura and they got a reish before their name, Rebbe. I'm 35 years old. I've been learning for 15 years. This guy learned for 2 years. I learned for 15 years. He's a rabbi and I'm not. So it doesn't really make any sense. No one. The question of rabbi, you take a bechina on a portion of Yoredeya, you learn about Hilchos Kashrus. So when the ratio of milk to meat makes something basar b'chalav or not, and all of a sudden, because you know those halachas, you're qualified to paskin shaylas about Hilchos Shabbos, or to paskin shaylas about Hilchos Brachos, or to paskin gittin. There really are no real rabbis. Even the Gedolei Hador are not proficient in all areas of halacha. There's very few people in the world who are actually qualified to answer all shaylas, and even the people with the most knowledge are not really qualified to be rabbanim, because in truth, in every profession, there's two aspects. There's the knowledge. There's basic knowledge that you need in any field. There's a certain type of knowledge you need. And the second important characteristic is to be able to make decisions, a good decision maker. And just because you're very knowledgeable, let's say in medicine or something like that, you're a doctor, you went to medical school for 5, 10 years, you had all the training and stuff like that, and now you have your own practice, and people come to you as a family doctor, and you have to make a decision: do you prescribe antibiotics or not prescribe antibiotics? It's not always clear. It's smakum suffix. Everyone's going to tell you it's not clear what to do. But as a doctor, you have to make those right decisions. So you can be very knowledgeable in all aspects of medicine, but you're a poor decision maker. You're an awful doctor. That's just the way it is. So, the same thing when it comes to rabbinics, there's a lot of suffix in halacha, a lot of suffix, not just in the Gemara, in halacha. There's always usually a machlokas. I remember in high school we had, 3 choices: mutter, aser, or machlokas. Usually it was machlokas. If you wrote machlokas, you definitely passed. You probably got an 80. So everything's a machlokas. The question is, who's good at deciding, at evaluating, weighing the pros and cons, right? When to be machmir, when to be mekel. That takes a real shikul adas, takes a real balance of knowledge, and very few people have that ability to make decisions the biggest rabbis who know all Dalit Chelkei Shulchan Aruch. They can quote you verbatim what the Shulchan Aruch and what the Ramah say. It doesn't mean a darn thing. First of all, it's printed already, so why does it help me that you can repeat it without the Sefer? Just open up the Sefer. It's written down now. And usually these people that spend their time, their nights and days just occupied with Sfarim, do not have relatability with the world. They don't understand the world, especially if they've never entered, if they've never tried to be part of the workforce. I've never earned a living for themselves. They don't really know the concept of dealing properly and dealing fairly with people. Usually, it's people that take a lot of favors from other people, which is the truth. So they're not people that are capable of making good judgments in life because they don't have good life experience. You need experience in life, and you need normal life experience. And that part of being a normal person is earning your keep in this world. If you don't earn your keep in this world, you take favors from everybody. No matter how much Torah you teach them, you take favors your whole life. You don't have responsibility, and you're not a normal person. If you're not a normal person, you don't have life experience, and you'll be a terrible decision maker because you don't know, what regular people are going through. You know, you think Shemachra in the Shiloh, but if you knew what was going on in the family, you knew the concept of what goes on between a husband and wife, goes on in a household with a lot of children, um, then you'd be able to make a more responsible decision and be makel more times. That's usually what happens. Okay, enough with my talking. But this is why you get Yeshiva YouTube. We turn on the Yeshiva YouTube because you get my unique perspective on everything. Of course, a lot of people probably turn it off now. This guy's a kofar. He's terrible. He's a heretic. He made fun of the rabbis. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not a rabbi. That's why I can say this. All right. Brachos anasim al anisim. 9 halachas. Aleph haroah makom shenasim al anisim l'Yisrael. He saw a place that a miracle happened to Yisrael, going Mabros Hayam. I believe this means the Red Sea, where Klal Yisrael crossed from the Gulf of Aqaba, if you know where that is, into, supposedly they crossed the Red Sea, and they crossed it into the wilderness, and they had to go from the wilderness to Eretz Yisrael. Well, Mabros Hayarden, the Jordan River. Yeah, where on the Jordan River did it split? That's what we're talking. Mabros Hayam is where the Yam Suf split. Mabros Yarden is where the Yarden split. When Yeshua came to Eretz Yisrael, Mabros Nachli Arnon. It's recorded in Sefer Bamidbar. A big miracle happened that they were walking to a valley in Arnon on their way to Eretz Yisrael, and there were people that were conspiring to kill Klal Yisrael, and the mountain sort of closed behind them and killed all the people. In the time of Yeshua, they fought a war, and stones rained down from the heavens to kill their enemies in Beis Choron. The Gemara says in Brachos, there was a time Og Melech HaBashan, he wanted to take a big rock and throw it on Klal Yisrael and kill them, and he picked it up, but it got stuck in his chin, his beard, or his chin. It says in the Torah that Moshe davened, he sat on a rock, propped the rock, helped him prop up his hands to daven to Hashem when they fought Amalek in the Torah. Yericho, when Yeshua encircled Yericho and the wall miraculously fell down in its place. These are nisim that are done to all of Klal Yisrael. So whenever you see that place, then none of these places you'll have to figure out where they are nowadays. Practically, no one knows. Even though Mishpacha magazine had a small story a couple of weeks ago where they try to figure out where in the Jordan River the sea must have split, and they had a couple different theories. But you'll never. The most it is a suffix, and once it's a suffix, so is brachas lahakal. You don't have a bracha. I believe some of these things. I don't even think they ever happened. Kriyas Yam Suf. Is that something that really happened, or is that just a metaphor? Did Klal Yisrael ever leave Mitzrayim? Or we're still in Mitzrayim. Ve'em bracha zu, ve'em mishar brachos. Harayim kishar brachos. We're going to talk about different types of brachos. We talked about brachos for eating and brachos for smelling. Now we're talking about different types of brachos as we go forth in these coming simanim. So you make Baruch Atah Hashem. Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa nisim la'avoseinu b'malchum hazeh. Al neish nasa l'ksas Yisrael beis kol zman shelo nasa l'kol Yisrael ruban ve'afilu nasa l'ksas shvatim ein mevarachin alav. The halacha is It has to be done for at least half majority of Klal Yisrael. If it was done for less than majority, it's not for all of Klal Yisrael. You don't make the bracha. Gimal kol dvarim einam melem k'shoro osam mishloshim l'shloshim yom. It's only if you haven't seen the place in 30 days. So if you saw it twice within 30 days, the second time you don't make a bracha. But if you wait 30 days, then you make a new bracha. If he saw a place that was a miracle performed, we'll see a supernatural miracle performed for an individual, not a special individual. But that person who the miracle happened for, he does make a bracha. There's even a song in Moshe Klein, he got into a car accident. He has a song about this. And all the people, all his descendants that come from him, whenever they visit that place, but only the son and the grandson would say it, unless the descendant was born, right, was the person who had the miracle happen, and then he had a son afterwards, right? If he would have died and there was no miracle, then his father never would have been born. So once the father is born, so after the nes, so then all the descendants until the end of generations make the bracha, because based on this nes they exist. Hey, mishanasu lo nisim harbe be'agil le'echad mikol makomos shenasu l'nes sarak la'ask kol shar makomos yichol klom bracha. If you're one of those rare people, you had multiple nisim happen to you. We'll discuss even if it's possible to have a nes, but so when you see one of those places, you make the bracha and you talk. You remember. You talk about all the other nisim in that bracha. Avav al nes shel rabo saral varach kishem shemavarach al nes shel aviv. Your Rebbe Mufa, not a regular Rebbe, a Rebbe that taught you most of your chachma, most of your wisdom. It's kind of hard to find nowadays. We have ArtScroll, we have Sfarim. Rebbe Mufa is really a concept, in the olden days where Torah was really Shabbal Peh, and really you didn't know Torah, you couldn't go into a shelf and take a Gemara, open an ArtScroll. Nowadays everything's really written, so no matter how many chidushim you hear from your Rebbe, it doesn't really make a difference. There's really probably no concept of Rebbe Muvak nowadays. You wouldn't make that bracha. If you see the person, right, that the miracle happened to him, so you'd make a bracha. Just like you'd make a bracha on that person makes a bracha on the place where it happened to him. A very special person, a VIP person. Yoav ben Tzruya was a general of Klal Yisrael. If a nes were to happen to him, there was no nes specifically that happened to him. It was a big miracle. There was a Kiddush Hashem. Daniel was saved. He was thrown into the fire, to the lion's den. They were thrown into the furnace. You make a bracha. A general, tzaddik, obviously. And these people were tzaddikim. They were thrown in. They were miraculously not eaten and not consumed by the fire. I don't know where these places are. I don't think anyone knows where these places are. So I think this whole simon is really irrelevant. If you see the wife of a Lot, make two brachas. She died. You make a bracha when you see someone who just died. When you hear someone who just died, she just died. She's a pillar of salt. Lot was a tzaddik. Even though he separated from Avram, he was a tzaddik apparently. So he was a significant person. He's like Rov of Klal Yisrael, and a miracle happened to him that he was saved from Sodom. What type of miracle are we talking about? So this is the opinion of the Radah, Shem of the Rosh, Milunil. It has to be something supernatural. Something which happens naturally. Robbers come at your house with guns. And they want to shoot you, and the gun jams. That's natural. You don't like bracha. There is one person who's cholik. Who is this person? Not clear. It's not really clear who this cholik is. They don't even bring in the beragola. Therefore, on a miracle, it's not supernatural. It's something which is, it's not likely to occur that his gun is going to jam. More times than not, I'll shoot you, but or you're in a car accident and going 100 miles an hour, and tonight you survive. Most of the time, you'll die. You survived, but that's normal. It's possible that happens, so therefore you wouldn't make a bracha. The Yesh Cholik holds that you would make a bracha. So since it's a suffix, you don't make a bracha anyway. Suffix brachas lahakel. Um, that's the conclusion of today's share. I do have an opinion about this last halakha. This is really the crux of this whole simon. If you only make a bracha on something which is supernatural, like the Gemara talks about, where people are in the desert, they're very thirsty, and all of a sudden they see, miraculously, they see a well of water, or they're being chased and they're about to be killed, and a wall just suddenly falls down, right? Which doesn't make any sense logically, right? It's logical for a gun to jam, or it's possible that if you get into a car crash, somehow you'll be saved. But something which is supernatural, where it's an obvious miracle, lamala miteva. So that's really the only case you have to make a bracha lamaisa. Um, so this whole simon is really irrelevant. Um, I'll tell you which side I hold like it Ian to lean on coming up next.